Hello, YouTube. It's one day late, but we were tired. We had two shows yesterday. Sorry. Just give us one free pass. Like, subscribe, enjoy the video. All right, before we even get into it, we ask that you give us one per year, okay? Just one. Yesterday, we had me and Casey and Katie Stats were in Penn State and then Michigan, and we had two shows, and we got home last night about 11 o'clock, and when it came to record the podcast, I looked at Casey, or I looked at myself, and I said, I don't know about this. I called Casey. She didn't know about it, so we were like, let's just do it in the morning. So we asked that you give us one. We like our Saturday night reaction shows, but Casey, I was legally dead at 11:30 last night.
Yeah, no, when I was in the Uber from Teterboro, whenever you called, and I didn't know if you were calling, this is how crazy yesterday was. I mean, obviously just the logistics of the whole thing was awesome. And, not to toot Barstool's horn too much, but like the fact that we pulled it off was incredible. But I thought you were calling to check on me because when I had thrown up after the second show. And then when you were like, listen, I'm not feeling it, I was like, well, I'm obviously in shambles. So yeah, I mean, I know I saw it was very few. Like, I don't want to make it seem like there was a whole bunch of people that were like up our ass about it. Very few people being like, oh, this is weak. Other podcasters do it. My message would be, well, other podcasters, that is fantastic. We've done it on Saturday nights after long ass days every single week. Other podcasters weren't flying across the country doing 2 live shows for tens of thousands of people yesterday. But no excuses here. We're here. We just needed the one get out of jail free card.
Just one. Just give us one. That's all.
Just one. And I will say, I'm still tired, but I will actually be making more sense. If I would have done this last night, I think I would have cried on the podcast.
I was fine until we got on the plane. And I don't know what about the plane ride. And the plane ride was smooth. It was fine, but something about just the engines or just sitting up there, and it felt like a 9-hour flight. It was really an hour and a half. And we got off the plane. I was a zombie. So I needed about 6 to 8 hours of rest. We're good now. Why don't we do a podcast?
Yes. I do have a shout out. Should I wait until after the show or after the opening or?
Well, it depends on how big your shout out is. Go ahead.
No, go ahead and start. We'll get to it.
For now, I'm eating bacon. Give me a shout out.
Yeah, now we're doing a Sunday morning show, so Brandon will be eating his bacon. So I know we'll talk about where we were yesterday, but I hope you remember their names because I don't think I got their names. But there were 2 guys that were on the side of the house outside in Ann Arbor, like during the day, and I came out to do an ad with Katie, and you were talking to them, and they were like, "We're Roughnecks." So one was a Michigan State guy, one was a Michigan guy. They were 2 of the nicest guys, and I just wanted them to know that I needed that interaction with them because they were like waiting just for me and you. Then they told me that they think KB is the hottest guy at Barstool, and that made me, or the hottest person at Barstool, which made me laugh for a long time. So I don't remember what their names are, but to those 2 gentlemen, thank you. You had caught me. I think I was in tears at that point. So thank you for making me smile.
Also, KB being the hottest person at Barstool is insane. It's absurd. Rudy's the hottest person at Barstool.
They were making a joke because they were like, oh, we're big Roughnecks. Like, we think you're the best looking at Barstool, which was very nice because I also needed that because, boy.
Me or you?
Me.
Oh, man.
But I was in my head, I was like, oh, well, thank you very much. And I needed that compliment because, boy, am I looking pregnant these days. But then he was like, well, actually, it's KB and then you. And I was like, you know what? I will acquiesce to KB because he's got a fat ass.
All right, let's go. Hello and welcome to Unnecessary Roughness, Barstool's college football podcast, brought to you by the good people at High Noon Hard Seltzer. Me and Casey were in Michigan yesterday and Penn State, and both places high noons were being raised to the heavens as people were enjoying their football Saturday. There's no better drink to enjoy your football Saturday with than High Noon. They have the tailgate pack, which is 8 drinks. It's 2 of the pear, 2 of the cranberry, 2 of the black cherry, and 2 of the grapefruit. The pear and the cranberry are both new flavors. Are they still new flavors? I guess they're still new flavors.
Yeah, they're the newest.
They've been out all football season, but if you haven't tried the pear or the cranberry, you got to try both. They are both upper echelon High Noon flavors, and High Noon has some of the best flavor in the game. So I also love the peach. I love the pineapple, whatever. I love them all.
I will tell you that you can usually tell how good whether it's a cold drink or a hot drink plays. I know we did the whole candy corn run around last episode. You can usually tell if they're drank year round, no matter what the weather is. And in Ann Arbor, it was still chilly, but it wasn't bad. Penn State was freezing. I mean, I was still wearing my big winter coat. We all had hand warmers. You knew that high noon plays no matter what, because I saw people in the crowd with gloves on, still holding ice cold high noons. And like, that's dedication, because once you hit a certain point and you're outside, you don't want a cold can. You want to, put it in a cup or get something hot or just drink whiskey. No, these people were like, no, we still want to drink the high noon. Just put a glove on. You can't feel it.
It was a wonderful day filled with high noon. All right. College football week 9 in the books. And before I go any further, I got to ask Jack and Katie and Casey and then Noah, if he's listening, do you hear that whirring sound in the back of my house? You don't hear a PlayStation whirring? Okay, very good, because it is very annoying to me, but I didn't think it was loud enough for you to hear it. Okay.
There'll also be, I'm sure, football sounds coming from my living room as well any minute now. So
football sounds? Is somebody playing football in your living room?
Well, from the TV, Brandon. There's a TV in my living room.
The way you said it, I didn't know if I didn't know if Gronkowski was in your living room about to run somewhere else.
No, there's a football game going on in London right now.
You guys have to excuse me. Tom Brady is over working through pad skeleton drills.
I mean, you think that out in the universe.
Yeah, that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, would it? By the way, Casey, you getting pregnant right before Tom Brady gets a divorce, that was bad planning.
Yeah, well, it's amazing because my boyfriend is sitting in the room, so I'm sure he won't think that was a joke at all, Brandon.
Oh, listen, your boyfriend's a great fellow. Doesn't measure up to Tom Brady in the least, but whatever.
He just turned around. Yeah, no, I mean, listen, I do realize that, the cosmic universe or whatever you want to say that played into this it's a cruel joke. However, you made it very clear that you think Tom Brady is going to date like a 22-year-old. And I can admit this to myself. I'm not a 22-year-old. So maybe one day.
No, listen, me and Casey had a heated debate that lasted for 30 minutes on who Tom Brady's going to date next. I think he's cashing in early. I think he's going very young. I think he's going Sydney Sweeney. That's what I think he's doing. I think he's going.
He's married.
Huh? Is she really?
She's married. So
I didn't know that.
Well, so was Tom Brady until the other day. So
that is true.
So Jack, I feel like you of all of us on this podcast, you probably have the most pulse on it. And people that are like waiting for college football are like, what the fuck? We waited all night to listen to this. It is important, obviously, big news. I don't think that he's going to stay away from super young girls. I mean, he's a 45-year-old guy. He's hot. He's popular, whatever. I think the next girl he dates will be older than that, like fully out in public dating. And I said maybe like late 20s to mid 30s was my guess. Brandon,
you also threw out Jennifer Aniston.
I said that wouldn't be a horrible one. Jennifer Aniston's hot.
Well, she was. I mean, she's older.
Oh,
what?
Sure.
Listen, this man is gonna be able to pick from the top shelf.
Yeah, Giselle is the top shelf, and she's his age.
Yeah, but she's got an expiration date. He's gonna get some more. He's gonna get some more ripe fruits.
I hope that your wife is within hearing distance.
She's standing 8 feet away. She knows what I'm saying.
I hope she slaps the shit out of you. No, I see him with like somebody in their late 20s, early 30s. I could be wrong. What I really don't want to see is that I don't want to see him with like somebody who's going to like make him do a bunch of like really lame, like viral TikToks. Like, I don't want to see Tom Brady sell out for like the like crazy.
You don't want to see him become Dave Portnoy.
Well, I didn't say that. You said that. No. I didn't say that. I don't want to see him like hanging out at like the Sway House, if that's still a thing. I don't even know if that's still a thing or not. I don't want to see Tom Brady doing that kind of thing. Like, I still want to see him at the Met Gala. Like, I still want to see him have like the lifestyle that he had with one of the top supermodels in the world. But
right.
Tom Brady on the loose. I'll tell you who though. We know who's going to be with Giselle. She's going to end up with like some super billionaire oil guy. Right. That's like older than her. And it's going to be like, well, of course she did. She went out and got a billionaire that doesn't play sports and she doesn't care.
All right. Upset weekend didn't really happen. It got close though. It got close. I was this close. I called this upset weekend. Now you did have number 16, Syracuse, number 9, Oklahoma State, number 10, Wake Forest, number 20, Cincinnati, number 25, South Carolina. that's 5 teams that did in fact get upset, but like teams like Ole Miss got off the hook, teams like NC State and Utah got off the hook, teams like TCU, although they were in control, they kind of got off the hook too. We got this close to upset weekend, but since it was an upset weekend, I think we start our day in Happy Valley, which is what we did yesterday. It's Ohio State, Penn State. Ohio State ends up winning the game 44-31, but games are so much more than a box score. Games are so much more than just looking at 44-31, because you look at that, you think, oh, okay, well, Ohio State kind of cruised a little bit. Couldn't be further from the truth. There was, for most of that game, they looked like they were in trouble until they took control in the fourth quarter. So my question to you, Casey Smith and others, how do you judge a game? How do you look at a game and say, if a team was in a dogfight for 3.5 quarters, but then does the things needed to do to pull away, how do you judge that game? How do you judge Ohio State yesterday, I guess is what I'm asking.
Yeah, it's a really fair question, because clearly we judge every team on a different scale of measurement. The thing, if you're talking about just what happened with Ohio State, Penn State, is if I'm looking at Ohio State going into that game, and we talked about it not only on this podcast, we've talked about it on the show. It was all about how dominant Ohio State's offense is and how they are the best offense in the country. And you've got CJ Stroud. What I judged this game on is the fact that their defense was the main reason that they were able to pull away and win by 13 at the end of the game. When you look at the turnovers they created, the stops that they had, and for most of that game, Penn State was able to move the ball, and CJ Stroud was not looking like we thought he even remotely could. So when I take away what I did from that game, it says earlier in the season, we knew what Ohio State's offense would look like. The question was the defense. The defense showed us that they are capable of winning really big games if their offense isn't performing, which tells me that it's yet another double-digit win for Ohio State. They've had 8 of them. Well,
the answer is yes and no to that. Their defense is the reason they pulled away in the fourth quarter. They had that big play, and listen, the number one, Jack, call his name out because I'm blanking on his name. I'll have to look at it.
It's JT Tuamalo or something.
Thank you.
I think that's how you say it. Like,
almost certain there's not an M in there, but that's
there is.
There is. Okay.
It's like TUIM or something.
JT Tuamalo.
He was the number 1 recruit in the country last year, and then he had the most glorious coming out party yesterday. But the problem Ohio State faces coming out of this game is that you're right, the defense did make flashy plays to get out of the game, but they also gave up 482 yards to a Penn State offense that isn't exactly explosive. Penn State did move the ball with relative ease all day. Penn State missed some field goals. Penn State made some mistakes. They had 4 turnovers. Without the 4 turnovers, who knows? Ohio State's defense definitely looked vulnerable for most of the game. But when it got to nut-cutting time, when it got to winning time, when it got to championship time, Ohio State was the far and away much better team. And even though they had moments of, oh, my God, is this it? They won the game going away. They won the game by 13 points. Again, they haven't won a game by less than double digits all season. This is a very interesting game to me because Michigan fans, and I know we sat next to one of the main ones, Michigan fans probably spent most of that game licking their chops saying, we killed Penn State and they can't handle them. We're going to kill Ohio State. But at the end of the day, Ohio State went on the road to one of the toughest places in the country to play and won going away.
Yeah, I mean, most of the game, you're right. It looked like it was going to end up being like, the cliche of who had the ball last or who was going to make the least amount of mistakes. If this game was by 3 points or by 1, like somebody missed an extra point along the way, then I feel like we would have a little bit more pause with saying how good Ohio State is, because there were a lot of times, especially, in the third quarter, when it just looked like it was like, what the hell is happening? I was like, maybe this offense will struggle against a defense that can then put up a fight. We'll see what happens when they play Michigan. But they ended up winning, like we've said, by 13 points from a game that they could have easily lost. They could have easily made the last mistake. And by the end of it, it didn't matter. I mean, halfway through the fourth quarter, the game was over. So that's my biggest takeaway for it, is that despite whatever mistakes have been made, whatever sloppy play had been made, both on offense and defense, at the end of the day, championship winning teams, great teams, top teams in the country do what Ohio State did yesterday. And they still ended up winning by double digits. That's the biggest thing. It doesn't matter how it happened. Yes, we can nitpick and look which we'll do all week. And I'm sure on Tuesday we'll look at more of it. But at the end of the day, they won by double digits in a game where they could have easily lost.
You know what's amazing about their offense is they've lost the best receiver in the country for pretty much all season. They haven't been with Jackson Smith and Jigba, who I think is the best receiver in the country. They haven't had him, and they replaced him with the best receiver in the country, Marvin Harrison Jr. He just stepped into that void and has been incredible on a week in, week out basis. That's how dangerous they are. I don't know. I came out there, and Michigan handled business in a kind of a sluggish, conservative way. They won 29-7 over Michigan State. We'll get to that game in a minute for different reasons, but it couldn't be more obvious at this point what we're headed towards. We're headed towards undefeated Ohio State, undefeated Michigan. I don't know who gets in the way of either of those. I know Michigan has Illinois, who is proving to be more real by the week, but I think we're headed towards undefeated Michigan and undefeated Ohio State. And even when they're not competing against each other this year, they're competing against each other.
Yeah, now we knew that going into it. We said, what are we going to be looking at what Ohio State does to Penn State versus what Michigan did? I want to ask Jack this because obviously me, you, and Katie were all in the house in Ann Arbor. So that just adds the element of chaos. You have Dave screaming at Eb's face, Dave screaming at you. You've got Dan. Like, we're watching it from a Barstool content standpoint. So Jack, who is away from that madness, Jack, when you were watching that game, did you feel that there could be a chance that Penn State really pulled it off like late in the game? Because it felt like that to us because it was happening, but it still was just like we were in the mix of a battle.
Yeah, for sure. Like, obviously, up until the pick six from JT, I thought Penn State, Brandon said it perfectly. They took control when they needed to. So did you said that as well, Casey. The bigger message here, I think, is the fact that we talked about on Thursday or Tuesday that I said that Ohio State's defense looks really good. Mm-hmm. They looked kind of average during this game. And from a Penn State offense that isn't very good. And that's going to be something we're going to have to keep an eye on for sure.
Do you think though, because they looked average and they let up big plays. And like Brandon mentioned, for a lot of that game, they didn't look good. But do you think that because they were able to turn, I feel like I'm so laser focused on the fourth quarter now, but that is what happened. Do you think that because you were able
my question would be, what would Hendon Hooker in Tennessee do to that defense?
A very fair question, which that's another argument that's now come out of this. And Brandon and I were on the same side of it early yesterday. We'll obviously get to Tennessee, but what Tennessee's offense looks like, it's insane. I don't know, the defense to me, like they gave up a ton of yards and it's Sean Clifford and we've, argued ad nauseum about that, but it just, at the end of the day, they still were able to step up to create a 13-point win against a team that got killed by Michigan, but they're still a really good team.
Yeah, so our argument was which she thinks Tennessee has the best offense in the country. I think Ohio State has the best offense in the country, which, it's 1A, 1B. It could be a coin flip. And even if you look at the numbers yesterday, Ohio State goes on the road, scores 44 points. Tennessee scores 44 points. So, it's just they're right in lockstep with each other. I got one story, one player to shout out on Penn State and then one story. And it's a story that only serves me. So those are my favorite stories.
Naturally.
Parker Washington, the receiver for Penn State, is very good. A very, very good player on an offense that isn't exactly explosive and with a quarterback that isn't very good. He is outstanding. Now, here's my story. 10-year-old Brandon Walker, all right? On Friday night, where do we go? The West Point High School football games. West Point High School, 11-time state champions, the best high school football program in Mississippi. All right, when I'm 10 years old, I'm in the 5th grade, and we go to games, and we have the two best running backs in the state. One's Danny Sherrod. He ends up going to Jackson State. The other one is Chris Washington, all right? And he is from my hometown, and he played at my high school, and he was a legend, a hero. When I was 10 years old, he was the best player in the history of the universe. He was a running back / receiver, just did everything, was amazing. He wore number 3. When he graduated, he went to Air Force to play college football, and I never heard from him again. And which always made me sad because, when I was 10 years old, he was like my hometown hero, and I was impressionable. Flash forward to 2022, there's this kid named Parker Washington who's tearing it up wearing number 3 at Penn State. And I look it up. He's the son of my hometown hero, Chris Washington, who moved away many years ago and had a son who goes on to be a great, great receiver at Penn State. That was a neat self-serving story that ties back into my youth.
Yeah, no, it's a good self-serving
Looks
story.
good. By the way, this Parker Washington looks exactly like the high school guy I remember in my brain. Where's the same number was incredible.
Well, actually, you know, it's self-serving, but I was the witness to this, and I'm going to have to give your mom a little credit here because we were at dinner and your mom was the one that mentioned it. And it was one of those things you couldn't tell if she was like fucking with you or not. You're like, you're fucking with me. And we ended up looking it up, or you did. But I told you then, and it's the same thing now. It's like that age when he was your favorite player is the best time to be a sports fan because it's all you care about. You literally have nothing else to worry about but loving whatever sport or whatever, you know, person or music or whatever. So the fact that like that all comes to fruition now is a cool story, Brandon. Everyone that's listening to this has some sort of story like that. So it's nice nostalgia on this beautiful, beautiful Sunday morning.
All right, let's move on to probably a game that wasn't as marquee as Ohio State, Penn State, but a team that has made itself more marquee than probably both at this point. To me, the Tennessee Volunteers took a big step toward being the number one team in the country last night, and they're setting up a game against Georgia next week, and we will have the first college football playoff ranking this week. But Tennessee destroyed a pretty good team. Now, some out there might listen and say, "Oh, yeah, but you hated on Kentucky." I never hated on Kentucky to a point where they should. I always said Kentucky was overrated as a top 10 team. They should be between 15 and 20, and that's where they ought to be. Kentucky is about the 15th to 25th best team in the country, and they walked into Knoxville last night, and a lot of people, myself included, I didn't think they'd win the game, but I thought they could give Tennessee fits. I thought they were the best defense they faced, and Tennessee is just an absolute machine right now. They're something I haven't seen in a long time. They destroyed Kentucky 44-6, took their soul, took their heart immediately, and I don't know. They deserve to be the number one team in the country right now.
That's why, you know, you mentioned the argument that we had about the best offense yesterday morning on the show. I was talking about how I do think Ohio State's the 1A to Tennessee's 1B. By the nighttime, I had switched it. And it's splitting hairs at this point. But I took Tennessee to win this game because, and to cover the spread. And we talked about it on our Thursday episode. We talked about it a lot yesterday too, because I just don't see, and again, I'm not talking shit about Kentucky, but I'm with you that, you know, Kentucky had all the expectations in the world, especially at quarterback, and they weren't going to be that high by the end of the season. But Tennessee has taken the expectations that a lot of us had and blown those out of the water in the best way. I mean, I still think a lot of people said, you know, we'll see what happens with Florida, but it's Georgia, and then it's Tennessee as the second in the SEC East. Well, now, I mean, we'll obviously see them play it out on the field, but there's a very real possibility in my brain that Tennessee can beat Georgia. And that's the story of this Tennessee team, is that we knew they were going to take another step with the offense, with Hendon Hooker getting it figured out after what he did last year. Now they're just blowing people out of the water. And it's like, okay, so where does this stop? Because you look at what happens with Georgia, and obviously Georgia is elite, both sides of the ball, that's fine. But I can't see a world where Georgia goes in and silences those narratives completely. To me, it feels like it's going to be one of those games that could potentially look like Alabama for Tennessee because this offense is so fucking good.
Well, going into Athens is totally different than having your big games in Neyland Stadium. They had Alabama in Neyland Stadium. They had Kentucky in Neyland Stadium, which doesn't mean it can't travel. Athens is a different animal. We'll put that game aside for next week. I'll say this about Tennessee. As Hendon Hooker continues his Heisman run, he's got to be solidly top 5 right now. I'd say he and C.J. Stroud sit at the top together. A lot of people sometimes confuse the top 25 or any rankings for a reflection of the seasons, of the quality of the seasons teams have had so far. And so for some, that's true. TCU certainly came from the back and has earned their way up to the top 5, top 6 by starting 8-0. But a lot of times it's just based on who people think is the best team. If you rank who you think is the best team, you can rank it however. You can put Tennessee number 1, Georgia number 1, Ohio State number 1, whatever. But if you were ranking who's had the best season so far, the Tennessee Volunteers have had the best season in America. They killed Kentucky yesterday, a ranked team. They beat Alabama. They have multiple other decent wins. They have had a phenomenal season. If we were giving away prizes or if we were grading seasons, they probably have one of the only A pluses in the country. That's how good they've been. And I know I'm talking a lot. It cannot be overstated that a year and a half ago when they hired Josh Heupel, there's not a human being alive that thought this was possible. This is one of the craziest things I've ever seen. Nobody liked the hire. I'm not sure Josh Heupel liked the hire.
This is 2019 LSU. They're 2019 LSU.
They're 2019 LSU, but they're 2019 LSU. Yeah, nobody really saw that coming either, I guess.
Nobody saw that coming, but I mean,
so there's a lot of parallels, right?
Yeah.
Early season on the road, out of conference game against a decent team.
Yeah.
In Pittsburgh.
LSU's was at Texas, Tennessee's was at Pitt.
And then you have I believe they beat Florida at home. LSU did. And then their big season in division game was the same weekend as this weekend, November 9th, 2019. And Tennessee's going to play Georgia on November 6th or 7th, 2022. Now, obviously, they have a long way to go. But why I'm making these parallels is I saw a big improvement from their defense yesterday, and that's going to be their biggest key. We know their offense is elite. If they can continue to create turnovers and play physical, the only thing is this, we talked about it on Thursday. This Kentucky offense is not very good at passing the ball. They're great at running the ball, and Tennessee's run defense is elite, and they stop them. So
imagine if Kentucky had a first round NFL draft pick at quarterback. Imagine how good that offense would be.
And I know we'll talk about this game later in the week, but Stetson Bennett's gonna have to show up.
Yeah. Stetson Bennett.
And I love the parallels, Jack, because it's like it goes back to, granted, LSU felt like it literally came out of nowhere. And Tennessee, like I said, it was like, okay, they'll be the second best team in the East, but like that to me says that
I didn't even know that. I was questioning that. I didn't know they would definitely be the second best team in the East. I could have seen several teams doing it, but they.
Yeah, no, I think I when we go back to look at those preview episodes, I mean, I think, I know I had Tennessee as second in the East. I believe Jack did too, but making the argument for Florida wasn't a terrible argument either. I mean, and now it looks like it could be, but it wasn't something, and I can only speak for myself, that I was like, okay, Tennessee is going to rival Georgia in the East. I was like, well, it's Georgia, big gap, then Tennessee for 2022. That gap's not there. But the cool thing about if the parallel does continue, and obviously that's setting the bar very high because LSU won the national championship, but will we be talking about Hendon Hooker in a few years the way that we talk about Joe Burrow? Again, very high bar there. But if those parallels continue to play out, the answer is yes. And I love when that happens. I mean, granted, I would love it to happen to a team that I root for, but when there's like a core that seemingly comes, I mean, Lamar Jackson did it at Louisville a few years ago. I mean, I guess it's been forever now, but it was like all of a sudden he just burst onto the scene, and then we still talk about him years and years later. Hendon Hooker has that type of potential.
I think he's too old. He's going to start his NFL career when he's 25 years old.
Which is, by the way, insane, because it's like when you graduate college as like the normies like us, it's like, you take it a couple extra years, whatever. You're so far behind the age 8 ball when you go into the NFL at 25 because of how young some of these guys are. But with that being said, like guys play until they're 45 now. So maybe not.
We're going to watch number 1 against number 2 or 1 against 3 next week, and the combined quarterback age is going to be like 50. Joe Burrow's pretty old too, man.
Yeah. Was he 23 when he got drafted, or 24?
He was born in 96. Hooker's born in 98. So Hooker is like 1 year older.
Yeah. I mean, Joe Burrow made it to the Super Bowl in 2 seasons. So,
Hooker is older than Tanner Morgan. Like, that makes no sense.
Yeah, we have old quarterbacks in college football right now because of the COVID year and because of the way things have played out. All right, so that's Tennessee. Teams are lining up to me. I think we've had a clear top 5 separate itself. I tweeted it out last night. I'd like to hear Jack's thoughts, particularly because of this one team that he and I still are going to disagree on. I think it's number 1, Tennessee, number 2, Ohio State, number 3, Georgia, number 4, Michigan. And that's really your top 4, no matter how you put it, as far as I'm concerned. I have Alabama number 5, despite the 3-point loss on the road against Tennessee. TCU is undefeated. Clemson's undefeated, but I just think we're starting to learn that I'm not sure either of those teams belong in this discussion with these elite teams. Jack, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think TCU and Clemson are in their own little pocket after the first few teams, without a doubt. That being said, I mean, TCU proved again, and I'm sure we'll get to this game, that they're a good, really good football team.
All right, now we got a couple more things to talk about before we get to the good and the bad. All right, Michigan and Michigan State is a story today, not because of the game. The game was a boring slog, 29-7. Michigan won, and I guess they look fine. They started slow, but who cares? They won by 22 points. There was a fight after the game in the tunnel, which, by the way, I'm convinced World War III, the next great World War, will be fought inside the Michigan tunnel at Michigan Stadium, because that place has been the site of several wars this year already. Didn't we have something about the Michigan tunnel earlier this season?
Yeah, Penn State and Michigan were throwing peanut butter and jellies at each other.
Yeah, so now we have
Sounds ridiculous when it's said that way.
now we have last night, we have a video of a Michigan player in the midst of pretty much every Michigan State player on their team, just getting his ass whipped, getting beaten down. And I'm always leery of a fight video that starts in the middle of a fight, right? You really can't determine who's right or wrong from a fight video that starts in the middle of the fight. What we see on camera is Michigan State players taking turns, just waylaying this dude, and he ends up running away at the end. But I don't know if y'all saw it, but Dave, did you see the video Dave tweeted this morning?
Mm-hmm.
I can't see the number one he's talking about. I can't see.
Oh, he's right there. It's later in the video, but he appears and then he skips into right in the middle of the Michigan State players. Now you can't tell what he's saying. Obviously, it's so far away, but you can see there's a posture there. Like it's a little bit of shit talking going on. It's a little bit of jawing. Here's my take on it, and I'll open it up for others. Whenever it's a sports fight, and sports fights, I don't know why we would ever get police involved in sports fights. I really don't. I don't know. This was a game. They're all charged up. They're fired up. He walks in. He gets he whatever happens, and he ends up walking away. No, whatever. Like it was a stupid fight between guys that were keyed up because of a stupid rivalry game. This isn't a police matter, and all of a sudden we're talking about getting the police involved. It's in the Ann Arbor Police Department's hands. Like, why? Jack, am I crazy here?
I don't think police should get involved. I mean, it really depends on the situation from angles we don't really have cameras for, like we don't have personally. It's could you say number one incited it? Possibly. It seemed like that was a pretty serious like beat down now.
Mm-hmm.
So it's possible that there could be some ramifications in terms of suspensions within the Big Ten.
Suspension's fine. Suspension's fine. I don't need guys going to jail for this.
Yeah, I mean, also I don't think no one really goes to the jail anymore, anyways. But
right, relax.
All right.
Okay, that being said, he got away. The tunnel situation at Michigan seems like the biggest takeaway here.
Yeah, let's clean up the tunnel, guys.
Yeah, I think
the only thing is these teams. This probably happens a lot, and not every time.
Yeah,
there's an assault. Like this never happened in Ohio State, Michigan.
Yeah,
they go through the same tunnel.
Yeah, that's my thing. Is like the tunnel is clearly a problem, but that also kind of feels like, and again, very different situations. But that's kind of like, well, she shouldn't have been wearing that. Like people like are in the tunnel a lot. I don't necessarily think they should all be like thrown in prison, but I don't care what exactly was said. I don't care like what incited it, unless somebody like killed somebody or like the visual of what Michigan State did is very, very bad because they're all in their helmets still. They're all fully in their pads. Clearly they're pissed off. They lost the game. And it is like 20-on-1. Like that to me does deserve conversation because it's like they kind of jumped the guy regardless of
No. You don't know if they jumped the guy. Again, it's a fight video that starts in the middle of the fight.
I mean, if it's one guy versus an entire team and one guy's not even wearing a helmet, I think he had one shoe on. I have a hard time believing that that guy ran off by himself without a helmet on and was like, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. I'm going to do this. Like they surround him at one point. He's down on the ground and yes, he got away. But then to see like there's guys wearing Michigan polos, like filming it too, it's a really bad look because anytime it's 1 versus 5, 1 versus 10, especially with all of these guys being in helmets, it's a bad fucking look. You can't do that.
It's a fight. Fights never look good. Fights are stupid.
No, they
Fights
don't.
happen.
But it's like, again, I know it's different when it's on the streets or at a bar versus a football game. I get that. But like and maybe it's because I've gotten older and softer. I don't know. But when I see videos of like one guy getting beat to shit, even if it's like frat boys, even if they're tiny little 130-pound frat boys, like one guy getting the shit beat out of him by multiple people where you just can't simply defend yourself, that's inexcusable to me. Then you add the football element. Then you add the fact that he didn't even have a helmet on, and like, what's he going to do? Swing at a helmet? Like that to me it's unacceptable. Like it can't happen. I don't care if they tried to force you to fight. Like don't fight like that. And it is one guy versus 20. Like that's not okay.
Also, it's 2022, and Michigan has one of the biggest, best stadiums in the country. Why do we have one tiny hole cut out in the stadium where all the players have to filter through together after a game? That's crazy. That's crazy.
Because I think that
two tunnels, everybody, two tunnels.
I think that it's one of those like old school, like, oh, look, they still have to walk out. Look how heated it's going to be. And then things like this happen. And you really are like, well, do we really want to see what's going to happen with that kind of stuff? Do we really want to put these kids in this position? The answer is no. But I don't think people, again, I'm not saying everyone should be thrown in jail, but there definitely should be some repercussions, especially if, the more the videos come out, we see how it happened. Because you can't be beating the shit out of a guy when there's one that's in blue and maize and everybody else is in green and white. You can't do that.
That's the most fun time to do it, when you can't lose.
Well, that's pussy shit.
Okay, relax. My wife.
I mean,
now my wife's judging my choice of job.
Please.
No, I'm just kidding. It's not like she just started doing that now. Okay, let's go. I'm gonna cruise down through some good stuff I saw on Saturday. All right, the good. TCU stays perfect. TCU goes on the road to Morgantown and beats West Virginia by 3. I'm sorry, by 10, because they called a play like an asshole at the end to score 7 points they shouldn't have scored. They are 8-0 now. I am still not buying it. Sorry. I'm just not buying it. I'm not buying it. Listen, undefeated is great, and you are what your record says you are, and you get to be highly ranked. But I look at teams like Michigan and Georgia and Tennessee and all that, and I look at all these teams, and I look at TCU, and they're still giving up 31 points to West Virginia. Like they're different than the other undefeated teams. They're different than the other teams up there. It's a good story, great story. Not an elite team.
That's where, and you asked Jack about it a second ago before we started talking about Michigan State, like which tier you put them in. Like, do I put TCU in the tier of the top teams? No, but I said this a few weeks ago and I had to convince myself of it. Not even convince myself. I had to admit to myself, I've got to give this TCU team credit. And I know that the way that game ended was weird with the backdoor or the cover and all that. But I mean, they won by 10. Max Duggan had 3 touchdowns. Like at this point, to me, it's like, do I think that they can beat Georgia? Do I think they can beat Ohio State, Michigan, Tennessee, whatever? No. Do I think they deserve to be in the conversation to be in that position? Absolutely. And it's going to be November next week and they're still winning and they're still doing what they need to do in front of them. So I have to give TCU credit because they're doing everything that we're asking them to do. How can we not give them credit?
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Why do you have to give them credit? There's no rule that says we have to give teams credit.
What?
There's no rule. There's no rule. You can see through things. You can see through things. You can see through things. You don't have to give people credit all the time.
They averaged 9 yards a play yesterday. By the way, they played a fully healthy quarterback, so you can no longer say that. The refs were against them in one of the weirdest calls I've ever seen. What?
How were the refs against them?
Well, I mean, I obviously watch more because you guys are on the road and whatnot. There was a bizarre play where the punt returner was literally ran into by a West Virginia player. Then the ball, there was a flag throw, and then the ball hit the TCU player, and West Virginia got the ball inside the 10-yard line. TCU's defense actually played pretty well this game, considering that they played against a pretty good quarterback and pass offense. And then they averaged 9 yards per play
Listen,
on the road.
it's a good season. It's a very good. They're going to go 10-2. It's a good season. When talking about the teams of the upper echelon of college football, they're not there. Sorry, I'm not going to buy it.
The answer to your question, why do we have to give them credit? It's because that's why the season is played.
I don't know. I don't have to give anybody credit.
Well, you can do whatever you want, Brandon. You're a grown ass man. You're your own independent bitch. You can do whatever you want.
I don't have to give them credit.
You ain't need no man. I get that. However, if you're 8-0 by the end of December or by the end of October, going into November, and every single week, and myself included earlier in the season, was like, well, this is going to be the week that they fall. This is going to be the week that they prove that they're not able to go undefeated. They haven't done that yet. So we do have to give them credit because they can only play what's in front of them. Yes, I understand there's been some weird things that have happened, but they've taken care of business where they've needed to. And Max Duggan has continued to do what he's needed to do to keep his name. It's not like he's just putting up, shitty games and like he's serviceable and the defense is doing something and they're just eking out these wins. Like Max Duggan's having a hell of a season. So again, do I think that they can beat those top teams? Not necessarily, but I do think that they deserve the credit to be in that conversation, to potentially be in the position to play those teams when it comes playoff time.
All right. Yeah, whatever.
You subconsciously just did give them a little credit because last week you said they're going to go 8-4 and 9-3, and just now you said 10-2. But also, like, how much of it would you say if Texas was in this position? Everything the same happened, but the name on the jersey was Texas. I feel like you'd be saying it's back. Like at the TCU, it's hard to comprehend.
Irrelevant. No, irrelevant.
I'm gonna lose my mind. Like we talked about last week, how they play back quarterbacks, which is completely true. But then Spencer Howard and Kansas State yesterday go and completely destroy Oklahoma State. So like,
because Kansas State's the best team in that league by far.
But TCU beat them handedly.
Not really. And Howard got hurt last week. They lost both quarterbacks last week.
Howard got hurt at the end of the game.
I don't want to admit that TCU is really good from my internal bias against TCU from a decade ago. However, Jack is correct. We make excuses for others.
Obviously, they're having a good season. You guys are telling me they're having a good season. Are they a great team? That's the question I'm asking.
I think that I do think that they are for right now and what they're playing in the Big 12, they are. We have seen this in the past with other teams come out of different conferences. Again, OU, we've seen them be a really good Big 12 team and then go get their shit kicked in the playoff.
No. Case when OU's good in the Big 12, they win games by 50. Okay. They're totally different from what TCU's doing.
But TCU's undefeated through October.
I know, but we're not AP voters. We're not required to reward teams based on their win. We talk about college football, and we can say we see through things, or we can say this. We don't have to say, they're 8-0. They must be very good. I just don't think they're very good.
No, I'm not. I mean, I don't feel like saying that a team that's 8-0 is good is because we're thinking like AP voters. I mean, they beat Kansas State. Kansas State's also lost multiple times this season. I don't know what'll happen if they play each other in the Big 12 championship again.
I do.
However, it took me a long time to get to the point where I can say I think TCU is a really good football team. They are a good football team. Do I think that they are great? I don't think so, but they deserve to be in the conversation to at least prove that to us.
Of course, they're in the conversation. That's why we're talking about them. But I think they're not going to stay in the conversation long. I don't buy them. I'm telling you right now, I don't buy them. Y'all can buy them. Listen, we're all the same grocery store. We have separate carts. Okay.
I'm buying them for the Big 12. Absolutely.
All right. Not me. I'm putting them back on the shelf. All right. We move on. Other goods. And this, you talk about a team that's just assumed, and they're probably going to the playoff. Clemson lost yesterday, and they didn't play, but they lost. They had a bad day. a really shitty day. You want to know why? Because their wins, NC State survived the other night somehow, won 22-21. They came back from a 21-3 deficit. Their Syracuse win got destroyed by Notre Dame. Their
The Wake Forest.
Their Wake Forest. Oh my God.
Sam
Their Wake
Hartman.
Forest win. Wake Forest, number 10 in the country? I don't think so. Wake Forest gets destroyed by Louisville. All of Clemson's wins yesterday got hit and got hurt. And if you look at Notre Dame's a great example that might tell you the ACC isn't good at all. Notre Dame has lost to Stanford. They've lost to Marshall. Notre Dame has looked garbage against Cal. And then when they play the best teams in the ACC, they win. They have a win on the road at North Carolina. They have a win on the road at Syracuse. And these are two top 5 teams in the ACC. So Notre Dame sucks when they play anybody but the best teams in the ACC. And these are the teams that Clemson's resume will be built on.
Also, NC State, they struggle versus Virginia Tech on Friday or Thursday.
Correct. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
they pulled it out. They were down 21-3. They ended up winning 22-21. Clemson is possibly going to go get in the playoff, and they're not going to have a decent win on their schedule.
Yeah, when we talked about, upset Saturday, and obviously this was a game that you had marked, and this is the game that when I looked at, when you asked me of all of the games who I think could get upset, like the most likely, this is what I said Notre Dame for my pick of that, and I could have been wrong. Obviously we could all be wrong. However, there was just I give credit to Notre Dame because they did win, 41-24. Syracuse, it just felt like they were so high after that Clemson loss that was so close. It was a moral victory that it just felt like this was going to be that weekend. And I said, and I understand that it's Notre Dame has had really shitty games this year, but it was like Notre Dame is still Notre Dame. And they proved that even with all these storylines that have gone around, Marcus Freeman and, there were talks of him getting fired at some point, which are obviously put behind him now, but that they are able to still get up for these types of games. But I think that even if this game would have been closer, Notre Dame beating Syracuse after what Notre Dame has done this year does hurt Clemson resume. And I know, Brandon, you said that you think that they will for sure be in the playoff. I'm not convinced that that's going to happen. I understand if they went out and they win the ACC title, you have a hell of an argument that you have to put them in because of what they've done. But if you're looking at, you talk about how we are all allowed to watch football and see with our eyeballs. If you look at a committee, which is supposed to be doing that more than a computer would, you have to look at it and say, are we really going to think that they're one of the best 4 teams in the country when look what's happened?
We could be heading towards a fascinating debate. Like if Tennessee, and I'm just saying hypothetically, if they lose at Georgia and they don't get in the conference title game, but they still have wins over Kentucky, wins over Pitt, wins over Alabama, they're one loss right there with a great resume, and then Clemson's undefeated with no resume. The committee's going to discuss that, and it's going to be very, very, very interesting. You could also say that about one loss Ohio State or one loss Michigan, although they won't have the resume that Tennessee will have. Again, Clemson lost by not playing, but kudos to Notre Dame because every time you want to give up on them, they do this. They beat a North Carolina or they beat a Syracuse, and now they set themselves up for playing Clemson next week. Jack, what are you doing?
Well, the sports world stops for nobody, and with the NFL, social media, whatnot, there was just a situation at work. It's no big deal. Sorry.
Got it. And the other good, Kansas State destroys Oklahoma State. I mean, absolutely brutalized them. 48-0. Number 22 against number 9 and Kansas. This is why I'm not joking. I'm not doing this for effect. I do think Kansas State's the best team in the Big 12. Why they've lost 2 games, why they lost to Tulane and then TCU, I don't know. But this is a team that they can destroy you on the ground.
Yeah, and you're looking at a potential great rematch.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're right. TCU is going to have to go through hell this next month and then play in a conference championship game against another good team, which is a credit to the Big 12. But Kansas State looks great, and Chris Kleiman doesn't get enough credit for what he's built out there. And Gundy, I mean, I think this was like the only time in like AP history or something that a team was shut out as a top 10 team or something like that. I'm shocking.
it was a shocking result because, a lot of people took Kansas State, fair. I think a lot of people said, okay, Kansas State will cover, fair. I don't think anybody thought we would see what Oklahoma State did yesterday because it was so bad. And this is where I've fallen into the trap with Oklahoma State before. I've done the same thing with Oklahoma. I've done other things with other teams, is that you start to buy the belief around it from the fan base's standpoint. And Oklahoma State fans have been up our asses all year. Like, look how bad Oklahoma is. Look what Oklahoma State has done. And you're allowed to do that when you're winning. That's fine. But when Oklahoma has a Mike Gundy moment, or Oklahoma State, like they did earlier in the year, you can't be talking shit still and then go out and get your absolute shit kicked in. And that's what happened. Spencer Sanders, I've been talking about how he, and he's been a podcast lifer quarterback, and he's had a good season. And, there's a lot of times where we kind of gave him, a little bit of shit in the past seasons. They played terrible yesterday. There's nothing that Oklahoma State fans can even come out and try to defend at this point. And that's the danger of looking, and it's across the board, of looking at another team that you're rivals with and saying, look how bad you suck, glass houses, because Mike Gundy did it again yesterday. And that was embarrassing for Oklahoma State.
Don't look now. And I'm not saying they can matter this year at all, because they can't, but Oklahoma's stirring a little bit. Oklahoma's moving in the right direction. They have a road win against a team that can't get out of its own way, Iowa State, but Oklahoma's you're going to look up at the end of the year and you say, this was a bad year for Oklahoma. They're going to be like 9-3. They're going to be 8-4. And like, okay, well, they've got something building for the future. Other goods.
The problem is that embarrassing loss in the Red River Shootout. I mean, that's what everybody will point.
Well, it's bad, but it's, again, it's a 12-game season. And as they go towards the back half, if they can stack some decent performances, they can at least build for the future as they go into the, this isn't talked about enough, but as we go into December, it's going to be the most important December in the history of college football, because teams are going to have to show hope. Teams are going to have to show momentum. Teams are going to have to show you need to come play here, because this transfer portal is about to bust wide open. It's going to be more wide open than it's ever been because of teams like A&M who promised the world to recruits to get them to come, and not just A&M, but everybody. These high school freshmen or these high school seniors are coming in and getting gobs of money. Everybody that's playing college football right now looks at that and says, well, if they're getting money, I'm going to go get money. Brace yourself for the 2022 December transfer portal, because shit's going to go wild.
It's going to be fun. The transfer portal makes everything so much crazier, but even just the fact that, and I know a lot has to happen in November, and it always does. And, we're leading up to rivalry weekend, which is crazy for the playoff implications. There still feels, and it happened week 1, and, people were saying it, but it just still feels like the chaos of the 2007 season could potentially happen here, because there's just so many question marks of teams. Like, we mentioned TCU, we mentioned teams that are going to be on that bubble. It's going to be fun, Brandon. It's not going to be fun for teams like the one that I root for, that's going to lose a bunch of people. But beside the point, for everyone else, great time.
I was this close on y'all last night.
I don't want to talk about it yet. I know we'll get to it. I don't want to talk about it.
Y'all lost 31-28, but
I don't want to talk about it.
And y'all were this close. We all kind of have to talk about it.
I know. I don't want to talk about it right in this moment, because we're talking about the good things.
All right, a couple more good things. Last year we had a really shitty Heisman race. We didn't have players kind of step forward until the very, very end, when Bryce Young had the drive against Auburn, then beat Georgia to win it. He won the Heisman with those last 2 weeks. But this year, we've already talked about C.J. Stroud and Hendon Hooker, who are sitting near the top of this thing. Caleb Williams yesterday, USC quarterback, 5 touchdowns, 411 yards. They score 45 points. Drake May, North Carolina, won't win it, but Drake May, 388 more yards, 5 touchdowns. He has been stupid good this year. And if you're looking for a team to build around a quarterback, look no further than North Carolina, because the next couple of years are going to be fun with that guy in Chapel Hill. And again, Caleb Williams. Those are my that's my good list right there. Anybody else got anybody who was outstanding?
Max Duggan should be in the Heisman race.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. He's been outstanding all year, and they once again, for all the flack I give them, and I say I don't believe in them, they're still scoring 45 points a game. Like every weekend, they're scoring a lot of points, and he's putting up numbers. And one more thing, his receiver Johnston is absolutely incredible. Go
Johnston.
Yeah.
I know we talked about this game from like the viral moment standpoint, which will be the number one thing because of the fight and everything. But Blake Corum had another day, and I know that it was a lackluster game and it wasn't exciting. They still won 29-7 in a rivalry game, but Blake Corum with almost 200 yards again on 33 carries. I mean, I don't think he should win the Heisman. I don't think he'll be in the. I don't even know if I would say I think he'll be invited to New York, but the storyline with him does continue. And that game was we were in the air, so we didn't get to like actually watch it. We were seeing, updates until we landed. But anytime you have Michigan winning the way that they are, and he puts up those types of numbers, he deserves to be in that conversation too.
One more good that I missed. I missed it on my list. It's probably time to pay more respect to Illinois. I picked Nebraska this week to win that game, but it's time for all the record-breaking offenses out there, and that's fun. That's fancy and everything. Illinois has the best defense in the country, statistically, and maybe even in real life. They have the best defense in the country. They're the only team in the country giving up single digits in points. They win 26-9 over Nebraska yesterday, and it's fun to look at a team like Tennessee and say, Heupel, boy, that coach changed everything. Brett Bielema legitimately changed everything at Illinois. And he's a guy that was coming off an embarrassing stint at Arkansas, getting fired. And he just said, okay, well, I'll go back to the Big Ten and remind you who I am. And that's what he's done. Illinois is a solid top 15 team. They're 7-1 now. And their only loss is a very close one on the road to Indiana, which that's embarrassing, but whatever. It happens. It happens. And Brett Bielema has changed everything at Illinois.
Another good, and then we can move on. Also somebody that, I know that Brandon, you like to give me shit when I give Jack credit, but I mean, Bo Nix had 6 touchdowns yesterday. And I know Cal's defense is shit. I know that they were giving up a ton of yards. And when I took them as one of my proper picks of the week in the early show, I said that like Cal's defense is nothing to write home about. But to beat them 42-24 and for Bo Nix to have the day that he did, 412 yards and 3 touchdowns, like that is a storyline that has completely changed. You have to give him credit. You have to give Oregon credit. And Jack, I mean, talk about the Heisman. I don't think he's going to win because of everything that's in front of him. And obviously they did lose to Georgia the way that they did, but he deserves to be in that conversation squarely too. He's having a hell of a year.
Bo Nix season, baby. Bo Nix Renaissance season.
Yeah.
Katie, what were you going to say?
For the Illinois Georgia defense, like obviously, like throw out the numbers. Would you just like based on eyeball test alone, would you rather have the Illinois defense or the Georgia defense?
I mean,
Georgia.
For sure.
Oh, well, you said might have the best in the country, like not.
I did. I'm being nice to them. Okay? I mean, it's Georgia. Georgia's got first round picks running around like crazy. They got first round picks falling out of their pockets. So
just want to clarify.
At all times, it's Georgia. No matter who leads the country in stats, that defense is stacked. But Illinois has been an incredible story with a great defense. Now moving on to the bad, and unless anybody has any other good shout outs to give out.
No, all right. I mean, I think we've kind of covered them all.
I have one. I'll tee it up. UConn beat BC.
Oh,
did you guys see? I also
we knew
I was going to put myself the winner as the weekend later. I dominated Dan Wolken on Twitter yesterday. I don't know if you guys saw.
I didn't see that.
What you did?
So last night or yesterday after UConn won, there was a bunch of tweets I dug up of teams, and one of them was of journalists and whatnot. One of them was Dan Wolken, and Dan Wolken said that UConn was never going to be relevant in FBS against da 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 da. And you can make an argument. All right, they beat BC. It's not that big of a deal. I agree. But for me, it's cool, and UConn fans is cool. So I quote tweeted it with a bunch of laughing face emojis. Then he said, just because you beat Boston College doesn't mean you're relevant. And then I responded, and he said, this doesn't mean that you did not punt on your football program and you didn't put up the white flag. So I asked him 2 questions, like, why does CBS Sports Network pay UConn to have their games on their channel then? Is that punting on your program? Is paying your football coach $1.5 million punting on your program? And then he blocked me. He blocked me, and he blocked all of UConn Twitter who responded. Insane. He's an insane person. Jack. And I declare victory and UConn won, and I hate Boston College. Talk about probably the most disappointing team in the Power 5 this year.
I would agree. I thought they were going to be pretty good, and they've been nothing. They've been god awful, and they lose to they scored 3 points against UConn. You know, we were told Zay Flowers, told Jerkovich, whatever. Back to Vulcan real quick. If you are a public figure that talks about sports for a living and you block people on Twitter because they disagree with you, you are beyond soft. Okay?
100% agree.
That's
Jack?
I thought to myself when he was blocking me and my other UConn football Twitter friends, like, thank God I'm not on a podcast with someone that like him.
stand on your takes, man. Own your takes. And I'm speaking for myself and all the Tennessee fans who can no longer see what I have to say about college football. All right.
I'm looking. I don't know if he deleted the tweet. I thought maybe he
It's
blocked
there.
it.
It's there. I just saw it. It's
Oh, you
there.
did?
You have to click it. It's weird. It's like the account owner.
I think-
leaves it, but you can still
Yeah,
see.
Katie's right. I think if you block
Yeah.
somebody in response to a tweet, Twitter puts in like you have to do more to see it.
Yeah. If you click on it, you can still see it, but when you scroll through the timeline, it hides itself.
Again, Dan Wolken, be a man. Don't block. Okay.
What's up? But Jack, you did mention that you thought UConn would beat BC, and here we are. So congratulations.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
All right. That seems, I don't know how that seemed disingenuous, that thanks, but whatever.
No. I
Oh
was
no,
just,
that was
Oh,
I was
wait.
saying thanks. No one wants to hear me talk more about UConn football.
Thanks.
thanks, like the avocado kid.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks. All right. Real quick, couple of bads.
I have one thing. You know what's really good?
Wow. Okay.
The Barstool Invitational coming up, and with one of our very own teams.
The Barstool Invitational, Friday, November 11th, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, the Wells Fargo Center. It will be 4 teams. You're going to have at 5 p.m. UAB and Toledo. And then in the main event, the Akron Zips against the Mississippi State Bulldogs, led out of the tunnel by me, Brandon Walker. The Barstool Invitational, we're going to do college basketball like nobody's ever done college basketball. All the commentary, all the cameras, all the in-house entertainment, everything will be done by Barstool. I have a role. I have like 5 roles, actually. I'm also leading Mississippi State out. It's my wedding anniversary, but I will have my family there just in case anybody, and my wife is standing in the kitchen and wondering why I'm not going to be home on Friday, November 11th. But it is the Barstool Invitational, and we are going to destroy college basketball in a good way.
Don't you have a halftime show too you're doing?
Katie, I never stop moving during that tournament. I'm going to be doing like 6 or 7 things because Barstool's putting its best foot forward, and that foot includes Brandon Walker because he is Barstool's best foot.
Well, of course. I mean, what would Mississippi State basketball be without the face of Brandon Walker? I mean, that would be a fact. This is, not, again, I made the video before this weekend with the doubleheader, and I joked, oh, Barstool loves Barstool, like the haters. This is another thing, though, that you do have to say. It's like, people like to point out the dumb shit that we do, which we do a lot of dumb shit, don't get me wrong. But doing live events like this is very hard, and the undertaking that it takes for behind the scenes people to pull it through and the logistics. We did it, something incredible we had never done yesterday with 2 shows in one day. To be able to pull off a basketball tournament like this and to show that, like, Katie mentions the halftime show, like that's the Arizona Bowl is the same thing where it's like Barstool is going to change the way that people consume a lot of these things, because it's not going to be the boring, very prototypical traditional way of doing stuff. And I think that this is a really cool way to start it because it's early college basketball season. It's, teams that people aren't necessarily, no offense, Brandon, like clamoring for all the time nationally, but people will be paying attention to those teams because Barstool's doing it. So if you can't make it out to Philly, my pregnant ass will be watching it at home. So like me, you should tune in because it's going to be awesome.
All right, there's your Barstool Invitational. Now for the bad, and I think we've reached the part of the show where Jack has gone to pee. So,
Well, it is, he's probably had a lot of,
Might
coffee
like.
and stuff this morning. It's early.
all right, here's the bad. Now, I'm not scared to throw out takes. I throw out takes all the time, and sometimes they come back to me in a good way. Sometimes they come back to me in a bad way, but I throw them out. I don't care. Bring it on, college football. Bring it on Arkansas Twitter. Bring it on Tennessee Twitter, whatever. I'll throw out a take. Rarely has a take aged as well as what's happening now and going to happen. Anybody that watched Will Levis play college football, anybody that watched him at quarterback, And then anybody who then read articles from draft experts saying he was going to be a top 3 pick or the number 1 pick or that he's this incredible pro prospect, anybody who believed in that and fell for that just needs to stop listening, stop watching, stop consuming college football because you don't know what you're talking about. Will Levis looks like a golden god. Will Levis looks like a pro quarterback. Then Will Levis starts playing quarterback and it all falls apart. And Kentucky fans can be in on mentions. They say, oh, yeah, we beat you. No, Chris Rodriguez ran for 217 yards and he beat us. Will Levis is not good. And they went into a gunfight with a plastic knife last night. They went in to face Hendon Hooker with Will Levis's overrated ass, and he just is not good. And Kentucky was overmatched. What are his numbers? Like 9 for 30 with 3 interceptions. He was pathetic.
Well, and don't forget that when we put out the best quarterbacks in, every conference, but when we looked at the SEC, that Kentucky fans were all on our asses for him not being right behind Bryce Young. People are like, well, you tell us you haven't watched Kentucky football. Tell us you haven't watched Will Levis without telling us. What? And I have said it a million times, whether it's on this show or on Twitter or whatever, anytime that a fan base of any school, their only defense is, oh, yeah, well, we beat you. You're not relevant. Their only defense to you is that Kentucky beat Mississippi State, which is true. But you're not trying to say that Mississippi State's better than Kentucky. You're not trying to say that Mississippi State should be ahead of them in the conversation. You're just quite simply saying, Kentucky, you don't have the guy that you thought you did in Will Levis, and you were all up on our asses. So stop with those comparisons. It's lame and it's tired, but they thought Will Levis should have been the second best quarterback in the conference and made fun of us for putting Hendon Hooker there. So, yeah.
Will Levis last night, 16 of 27, 98 yards, 3 picks. That was his night. And again, in a night where you're keeping up with Hendon Hooker and a Heisman contending or a great offense, you go out there with Will Levis. Listen, that dream's over. And any GM that drafts that guy in the top 5 or the top 10 is a fired GM. Just go ahead and turn in your resignation because it's one thing to be 6'3", 200 and to throw a ball 90 miles or 90 yards. It's another thing to be able to do it against competition, and he can't. He's just not that guy. Another bad thing, Florida fans.
Whew.
Y'all want to have a talk about Billy Napier? 2 years ago, Dan Mullen finally got over the hump and beat Georgia and was in playoff contention for most of the season. And then last year, it fell apart on him. He didn't do well, and you fired him immediately. You fired him too fast. And you hired Billy Napier, to fix certain problems on the recruiting trail, and you hired him to compete with Kirby Smart in Georgia. And there was about a 10-minute period yesterday where I guess Florida did compete with Georgia, but overall, you're not on the same stratosphere with them. You're not in the same plane. And they have a coach who delights in beating Florida's ass, and Kirby Smart did it again, 42-20. They're not programs that are even worth mentioning in the same breath anymore. And throw that into the fact that you got him to recruit. And this week, I don't know if anybody here was paying attention. Cormani McClain, the number 2 recruit in the country, was a Florida lock. And he was going to Florida until he committed to Miami and Mario Cristobal. And Florida fans love to joke about Miami and how bad they're doing this year. But Mario Cristobal's down there building blocks for the future. What's Billy Napier doing? Are you happy if you're a Florida fan right now with Billy Napier?
I know what Billy Napier's doing.
Losing?
Picking out matching socks.
Okay. All right.
No, but
get over the socks.
in all seriousness, you can tell a program is down bad in the way that they feel about their team when there were people, and I was seeing it this morning because I was catching up on the tweets from yesterday at the show. Florida fans were celebrating the fact that they covered the spread and still lost by 22 points. That's when it's not like they covered the spread. Yes, if you're a gambler and you bet on Florida, congratulations. But Florida fans were like, well, I mean, good teams cover, great teams cover. And it's like, you lost by 22 in a game that we all said should be one of the marquee games of the weekend because of how the rivalry goes. And you lost by 22 points. You lost by 3 touchdowns. So that to me says even the diehard Florida fans are like, we're not in the same breath as Georgia, but we'll find something to cling on to. So credit to them for finding that spin zone. But if that's what you're celebrating, even remotely as a joke, you know how bad your program is. You have to.
Speaking of, you don't know how down bad they are. Our friend Josh Prey, who came on the show and told us that Anthony Richards was going to win the Heisman by throwing for 1,200 yards. He has a video saying it's time to, hey, Gator Nation, it's time to support Tennessee football.
What?
I haven't watched the video. That's just the tweet. So that's how down bad Florida fans are.
I would be interested to see, because I know that there was a lot of
Because they
people talking
want
about.
to, I would assume it's because he wants Georgia to lose, right?
Fine,
Yeah.
but Florida, Georgia are rivals, but Florida and Tennessee are also rivals. Just
Yeah,
don't
Yeah, I know. I guess.
just root for a tornado to hit the stadium or something. That's
Yeah,
what
no,
I do.
that's when, the again, it'll be interesting when Texas and OU gets into the SEC, but that's why I've always said, like, I would love for both Texas and OU to lose in the Red River shootout, because it's like, I don't want either team to win. I'm not going to root for either team. And that is the case across the board. I will say that I saw some Florida fans talking about how cool Tennessee's stadium atmosphere has been, which it always is at Neyland. So that's not a surprise, but there is a lot of people talking about how unreal it looks. That to me just shows that, like, when Tennessee's always a really cool stadium environment. When they're good like they are right now, I mean, it's not LSU, but it's up there. I mean, it's crazy how cool that stadium looks right now.
I'm fine with Tennessee being good this year. It's fun. It's a change of pace. I love new blood always. But I'm not going to be able to handle Tennessee fans being good for long. I'm going to need them to go up and go down quickly.
So you want, like, back to the argument that we've had a parody all season. It's like, you want them to be good for a few seasons to make it new blood, to make it interesting, but, like, don't make it a dynasty because we can't handle it.
I kind of want a new Tennessee every season. I just want a new. I want Miami to be good next year and Texas to be good. Come up, be good, go away. Come up, be good, go away.
All I'm going to say is Big T told us.
He did.
He sat there and told us, you better pray we don't go 9-3. They may go 11-1, 12-0.
They could be
He's fine.
undefeated, and that's not like Tennessee could hypothetically go undefeated. They could go undefeated, and we wouldn't be surprised.
I'm out on Big T because he keeps retweeting my stuff in Duval Nation about when I was saying Kentucky was a better program back in July, which is fine. It's fair play. But if you go back to when Josh Heupel was hired and he threw a little diaper ass fit and it was whining and had his ass on his shoulders because they didn't hire a good coach, and now he's like celebrating like, oh, I told you the whole time. Fuck him. Fuck him.
Brandon, this is what you do. You keep the receipts. You go back and do it too. All is fair.
I need somebody to go find. I found 2 last night. I know he had a bunch. I need somebody do the work.
I would be surprised if he's been deleting. And also, Big T and Brandon have a budding college football rivalry in the office, because yesterday I brought up a point Brandon made to Big T, and Big T just threw a hissy fit. I was like, Brandon makes me so mad.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Brandon, all is fair in love, war, and Twitter. You know that. You know that better than anybody. I mean, I assume
That's
we're going to
fine. No, but if he wants to play the game, he's going to play the game.
That's what I'm saying.
And when you play the game with Brandon Walker, the game doesn't end. I swear to God, I will spend every waking moment. That it's fun. People will start a Twitter war with me and say, "Oh, this," and then I'll say this, and then I'll say this, and then they think it's over. And 6 months later, I'm gonna keep going.
Oh, see, I
will die with this Twitter beef.
Because it's so funny to me when you see, like, people, they'll throw an insult or they'll troll or whatever. They're like, well, Casey, Brandon, whoever it is that has a little bit of a social platform, they'll be like, why are you taking time to respond to the trolls? It's like, well, you started it. I have the same amount of time that you do sitting on my phone. So why can't we? And you know who I've always known is good at being petty, but obviously spending more time around him every single year. Dan is really good at that. Dan keeps receipts.
You think?
He's always really good at it, but I mean, the pettiness, like, he's really good at everything he does. Dan's also like low, and I say low key, they're going to make fun of it because I know it's a part of my take thing right now. Dan's one of the best petty war people without admitting that he's a petty war person that I know, because he doesn't come out like we do and be like, listen, we'll spend all day. He just has it always in the chamber.
If Sam Pittman's fat ass messes up in 7 years, I'm going to be sitting there with a tweet. I'm going to be ready with a tweet.
I assume we're going to talk about that. Can we talk about that?
Why?
well, Auburn would be in the bad.
I'm gonna go through the scores now, and then whenever a score comes up that we need to talk about, let's talk about it.
Well, can I then I add a bad thing just
What?
because I know that we've all been in this position when our coach says dumb shit. Did you see what Bryan Harsin was asked yesterday after getting embarrassed to Arkansas?
No, what was he asked?
So Justin and I'm going to Hawkinson, I believe, is the Twitter account that I saw it from. It says Bryan Harsin was asked a valid question on how the team, quote, gets back on track after today's loss. Harsin responded, grinning. And in my head, it's like that shit-eating grin that Dave does when he knows he's wrong. What do you mean get back on track? And then this guy said, it's just exhausting at this point. We've all been there. Like I said, when our coach does something, regardless of what it is, you're just like, I wish you went into that. Bryan Harsin should not be doing the shit eating grin. Well, what do you mean? Bryan Harsin, that you are just lucky that you're not fired yet. It's 11 o'clock in the morning on Sunday. How has he not been fired?
I kind of like it. Like he knows he's a dead man walking. Like, you know who he is? He's, I forget the name of the character. The actor was Ron Livingston. What's the name of the character? He's the main character in Office Space. When the guy in Office Space just decides he's checked out and he doesn't care about work anymore, and he shows up and he's filleting a fish on his desk and he's showing up in sandals. I wouldn't be surprised if Bryan Harsin showed up to practice tomorrow in sandals and a Hawaiian shirt. Just be like, whatever. Well,
I have a
don't care.
question. Is Bryan Harsin quiet quitting?
Yeah, no, that's exactly. I think he is, because Bryan Harsin knows one thing, that no matter when you fire me, whether it's today, tomorrow, you're going to have to pay me to get me gone. So go ahead, do it. I don't care. Fire me.
I love that. That's true. Bryan Harsin is quiet quitting. Knowing he has a bag waiting for him when he quiet quits.
Listen, if I were a college football coach early in my contract and I was 2-10, I'm showing up to game number. I'm showing up to the next game like, all right, bring it on. Fire me. Let me go. Give me the money. I got some vacation property I'm looking at. Let's go.
Yeah.
It's the best job in the country. Fired football coach is the best job in the country.
Oh, the buyout money. I mean, every single year we act surprised that it's so high, but it does keep getting higher and higher. Fun little side story for you, Brandon, because I know you do like Office Space. Have I ever told you about the commercial that I did when I worked at a bar called Fox and Hound that recreated the printer scene from Office Space?
No.
Now, Brandon, listen here, okay? Quick story. I worked at a bar. It's a national chain, or it used to be, called Fox and Hound. We had like 80 beers on tap, but the branch that I worked at was all college kids that worked there. So it wasn't like the dingy, like just pub scene. And we wore low cut shirts and yoga pants because naturally that's what you would do. Correct. As somebody who's very open about how, my body changed around 21 because I paid some money for it. Sure. They wanted me to be featured in this local Fox and Hound commercial. And they were like, well, what we're going to do is we're going to take the scene from Office Space and we're going to go out and we're going to beat the shit out of a printer.
Were you the Fox or the Hound?
And talk about Fox and Hound. What I didn't know, which I should have known, what I didn't know was happening was the entire time I'm swinging a baseball bat into the printer, it's from about like here to here. You couldn't even see my eyeballs. And it's just low cut Fox and Hound logo, just boobs, just. Yeah. Now listen, I obviously was like, hey, can't hate the game here. I hope that commercial is dead and gone, because not only is it just an insanely bad production. Yeah. It's not great. I will say it is not great, but that was my foray into commercials.
Well, you just told about 30,000 dudes to go out there. Well, more than that, he told a lot more than 30,000.
I was about to say it's a lot more than 30,000.
You just told a whole lot of dudes, thousands of dudes, to go look for that commercial.
Well, here's the thing. Here's your credit to the 30,000 part. There's a lot more people that listen to this, but there's probably 30,000 dudes that would take the time. Yeah. But I've said before, the first time I was ever on camera at TexAgs, I was Jessica Durrell on the back of Bobby Petrino's motorcycle. There's that video out there. And I'm also wearing a low cut red shirt pretending to be her. And then that was my commercial. So thank you to Office Space for letting us recreate that glorious moment in one of the worst local TV commercials you've ever seen.
You want to go watch Kung Fu? Okay.
Okay.
I love the way she says, okay.
All right.
Brandon, is there a bad that you're waiting to bring up?
No, I was done with the bads and I was about to move into the scores. Is there a bad that I needed to?
Maybe there's a shit list.
I actually don't have a shit list. What are you talking about?
Oh, did you see? I think this was when, and I would have been dead too. I think this happened when you died. Did you see what Lane said to that Texas A&M player?
Yes.
I'm so dumb. I'm so done with Lane Kiffin's ass. And by the way, did you see his post-game interview when he looked ugly as hell?
He did not look ugly as hell.
Yes, he did.
But I will say, Jack, I was going to bring that up maybe later. The fact that he's just like blatantly out there just calling, 18-year-olds bitches and telling them to fake injuries. Like, I don't know how you can defend that if you're an Ole Miss fan. I understand it's like, oh, like our coach is like, you can't, like, you're a grown ass man. Come on, man.
But Ole Miss fans have defended a lot worse than that. Trust me.
Yes, but it's like he's like caught on camera doing it. It's like, oh, like, make fun of A&M. That's fine. Like, take out like the teams you're playing.
Well,
if you're a grown ass man with children that are probably pretty close to 18 and you're like calling them bitches, like it just makes you look weak. Like, what's that kid gonna do? Go fucking fight you for it? Like, he can't do anything.
And isn't that Evan Stewart? I think that was Evan Stewart. He's literally 18.
Yeah, no, literally. Like these, I'm not saying
fans,
18 because they're in college. Like I'm talking about these are like this was an 18-year-old kid, and he's like, what are you gonna do? Fake an injury, you little bitch. Like that to me had very Drake talking shit on the NBA sidelines vibes, where he knows he can talk shit to players and they can't do anything about it because of like who he is and like where he's sitting. Lane Kiffin knows that these players can't come over and do anything about it because he's in a role of authority and obviously they would get in trouble. Like that's a weak move. Like, come on. He is a literal 18-year-old child.
Give Ole Miss fans 6 weeks, and once he goes to Auburn, they'll turn on him and they'll find this stuff reprehensible. So it's gonna be fine.
Lane Kiffin's still hot though, like that.
Do you care about losing your AD or no?
I'll be doing the shit list in a little bit.
Okay.
Oh, okay. All right.
Motherfucker. In the ACC, I can't get my hair right, guys. Somebody bring me a hairbrush. In the ACC,
Please.
Does your family work for you?
You'd missed it. He on the bus before Penn State. It was all the guys and him. Casey was there, and he was sitting there with that hairbrush, just sitting and combing, and just everyone was like on their phones looking at scores, and he was just sitting there combing.
Oh,
like,
I'm sorry, Katie. I like to look good. Is that okay?
And Katie, I don't know if I told you
He's
this.
not in New York.
I told you this, or if I didn't, I'm telling you now. His mom told me to my face when we were in Baton Rouge, he has stolen all of her hairbrushes. Like he doesn't even go out and buy them. He steals them from his mother. And I've now gotten to the point where, and I do not begrudge you whatsoever because it does feel unbelievable.
Give my spray.
Now that is going to go against my argument. I think that you sit and brush your hair because it feels so good half the time. Like I think sometimes you're not even trying to actually do anything to your actual hairstyle. It just feels really nice and you're just figuring it out.
Just keep talking.
I also just love how he's bossing his children and wife around on a Sunday morning to get.
I am not. First of all, it's basically the afternoon. It's 11:46.
Have you ever tried one of those? Like it looks like a wisp, like cut off, and it's like the head scratcher. I feel like
no, I know what you're talking about, but no. All right, let's go in the ACC. I assume that spray will turn up in a minute.
With that, the NC State, on the Thursday game, with NC State struggling without Devin Leary, I feel like the biggest testament is how much of a leader and how good he is. Like they barely beat Virginia Tech. There was
I will say though, the back of the guy, whatever happened in this, I was on the under, so I was annoyed. But whatever happened in the second half of that game, he just learned. I think it's Donovan Smith. Is that his name or something? He learned how to throw a deep ball, and they put together a nice little offense. Some way. But Devin Leary. I mean, talk about one of the most important players in the country.
You know what the best thing to happen to them was? Falling behind 21-3 and then having to open up the offense and catch up. And they discover they actually have a quarterback. That's NC State we're talking about, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So
I was distracted. I'm rewatching the video. You don't want to talk about, we haven't mentioned it. We made fun of Tuck coming a lot. The video of the guy reaching down and touching Mel Tucker on the head and him swinging. Yeah. I don't begrudge him that. If I was walking into the tunnel and some fan reached down and touched the top of my head, I'd probably bat the hand away too.
Tuck should be allowed to hit that guy. Tuck should be allowed to beat that guy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Listen, fans of sporting events being a protected class is stupid. If you want, that's a human man down there. You can't, if you're walking down the street and a man's walking by, you can't just touch him on the head. That's not how we do life.
I mean, like, think about how if that was like a female reporter or a female like staff member walking into the tunnel and somebody reached out and grabbed her hair or something, like no one would defend the fan whatsoever. Like, you still can't reach over and touch any human being without their permission like that. So everyone freaking out like, oh, it gets worse. Like, look what Mel Tucker did. He didn't even land it. He should have landed that swat. I would have too.
Also, by the way, if there's somebody I don't want to fight, it's Mel Tucker. That guy is big, and he will. I think he has some anger to him. He will beat you up.
Oh yeah, no,
He's got a lot of pent up rage right now too.
He's also, regardless of like the rage factor, which obviously plays into it, he's still top 5 coaches that I wouldn't want to fuck with. Like, he's up there.
In the off season, I feel like we need like a 64 bracket of like coaches head to head. Who's gonna like who would win? Rough and rowdy.
Mel Tucker would be a favorite in majority of those matchups if I had.
All right, here we go. In the ACC, NC State 22, Virginia Tech 21. Notre Dame goes on the road and gets a 41-24 victory over the previously very overrated Syracuse Orange.
Uh-oh.
In the ACC, Florida State 41, Georgia Tech 16, UConn 13, the remarkably disappointing Boston College Eagles 3. In the game that gets the award for I'm sorry you had to watch that, Miami in 4 overtimes. 4 overtimes beats Virginia 14-12. That means you watched 60 minutes plus 4 extra frames and you saw 0 touchdowns.
0. Zero.
I watched some of it because of a Virginia alum that we've had on the show. He had it on for us. Worst game ever. Virginia football is, maybe we could talk about it on Tuesday, like really in bad shape.
When you talk disappointing, Brendan Armstrong was one of the best quarterbacks in the country last year and brought back every receiver he had, and they can't score. They're awful. But 14-12 and 4 overtimes. Think about that. The first time somebody got in the end zone was the 2-point conversion in the 4th overtime of the game. That, I guess it reminds me, what was the 9 overtime game? Was it Iowa, Penn State? Who was it? It was Penn State and somebody.
Illinois, Penn State.
Penn State, 9 overtimes, 20-18 final. In the ACC, Louisville 48, Wake Forest 21.
6 turnovers in 1 quarter.
I think they had 8 turnovers and 9 drives.
That has to be the worst quarter of major college football that's ever been played. It has to.
I had bet on Louisville, and I remember I bet on Louisville, and it was close, and they had taken a little short lead. Then I went and did something, okay? I went and did whatever I did, and I came back, and it was 41-14. They had been winning by 3, I think, and I came back, and it was 41-14. I was like, oh, my God, what happened?
So that's 14-13 at half or something.
Yeah, and then at the end of the 3rd quarter, it was 41-13, right, or something like that, 41-14.
Yeah, and credit to Scott Satterfield. He's gotten off the mat. He has put together a decent team this year, and he's putting together a nice recruiting class for 2023.
And finally, in the ACC, North Carolina, 42-24. All these teams, like Syracuse and all these teams that were getting highly rated with 1 loss, like Wake Forest was number 10. Like, North Carolina has 1 loss, and they're only number 21 in the country. It's time to why aren't they getting the love that Wake Forest was getting? Why aren't they getting the love that Syracuse was getting?
Every time we bring them up, Katie says they stink.
I know. I tweeted out. I was like, we're 7-1. I did like they had us in the first half. Not gonna lie, GIF. I was like, I'm very pessimistic when it comes to my teams. It's like if I expect to be disappointed, I won't be disappointed. I'm starting to get happy. I'm starting to get excited. I was like, all right, we have the pieces. Like Pitt always has our number. I think we're down 10. We were in the air, so I wasn't fully watching. We're down 10, and then I think we scored like 20 unanswered points. Okay, like we have a team. I still hate Gene Chizik, and I want him fired, but we might be pretty good.
In the Big
I'll save that.
In the Big 12, TCU, number 7, 41, West Virginia, 31, Oklahoma, 27, Iowa State, 13, Kansas State, 48, Oklahoma State, nothing. And Baylor, who's going to be a thorn in the side going forward for teams, 45-17 at Texas Tech. Got to be a punch in the gut if you're Texas Tech. You get Baylor at home and they destroy you by 28 points. Yes, Katie.
Also, Iowa State hasn't won a conference game yet. Remember 2 years ago when you thought Matt Campbell was going to get every job, like he was a top, and the Chiefs lit off the cracker last year. This year,
Okay, well, you owe me a quarter for that. In the Big Ten, Ohio State 44, Penn State 31, Minnesota 31, Rutgers nothing. TJ Hitchings cries. Illinois 26-9 winners over Nebraska on the road. Iowa scores 33 points and beats Northwestern.
Wow.
And I'm not sure we talk about Northwestern enough. They might be the very worst team in the country. They've not won on American soil. 33-13 winners. That's true. They have not won.
I know. It was funny how you said it. It's true.
Michigan 29-7 over Michigan State. We moved to the by the way, I know I'm just doing Power 5, but shout out to UCF who beat Cincy on a last-second touchdown. Outstanding game in the bounce house. What's the next conference? Pac-12.
Pac-12.
Thank you very much. We have Utah 21-17 over Washington State Thursday night. Oregon 42, Cal 24 on the road.
And they did it without Cam Rising. Utah.
One of the weirder things I've ever seen. Nobody had any idea Cam Rising wasn't going to play, and then
It was very weird.
they show the broadcast, and on the sideline, Cam Rising's just wearing a yellow vest. Like, what is he doing? Traffic work? USC 45-37 over Arizona. Arizona State 42, Colorado 34, and UCLA just cruises 38-13 over Stanford. And finally, in God's conference, the Southeastern Conference.
The USC game, Arizona stuck around, like for way.
Yeah, but they were never. They stuck around, and they're getting better. Like
they're able to move the ball a lot. Not that they made necessarily a game, but like they scored a lot more points. Like they did. That's not the Arizona we're used to.
No, I mean, Jaden DeLora and Jacob Cowing this year have been phenomenal.
Yeah, eat the chips. That's fine. What do you want?
Jed Fish has done a great job rebuilding that team, and Arizona's good. USC's defense is suspect, and every team really sticks around with them. Arizona State did.
Yeah, they don't win a lot of blowouts. Arkansas 41-27 over the rotting corpse that is Auburn. Georgia 42, Florida 20. Here's a team that I listen. I have some wrong takes, but I sat here and told you South Carolina is just phony. They shouldn't be ranked at 25, and they proved it last night. Mizzou goes into South Carolina and wins 23-10. 44-6 Tennessee over Kentucky, and then Ole Miss 31. The remarkably disappointing Aggies of Texas A&M 28.
Yeah, I'm not going to talk about them in the awards segment because I'm done. Like Katie said, like you expect the worst, you don't get hurt. The only thing I can say about that is I let you talk me into them A&M winning, which is fine. I don't blame you. Everybody thought that. I am by no stretch of the imagination trying to spin this season is embarrassing. I've said it publicly, but finally we got to see Connor Wigman finally. And, he had 338 yards. There were definitely times where that offense stalled, they couldn't do a lot. The fact that Jimbo sat this long and I guess waiting to see what Haynes King or Max Johnson can do. Connor looked good last night in a lot of spots that, he is a true freshman. So at least I can take that away from it. Like he didn't come out and get embarrassed. That game was, the defense did, again, a lot of things to keep the offense in the game, but at least we know that this kid can play.
Yeah, no, you're not chasing wins anymore. You're not chasing the SEC. You're chasing hope. You're chasing how many freshmen can step up? Can this quarterback step up? Can we be good going in 2023? You're building hope in November, not anything else. And I thought you were going to start last night, and you got close, but you didn't quite do it.
Yeah, and then Ole Miss's defense is shit. We've seen that, but at least it's a game where now he had a week to get with those receivers, and then Devon A-Chain, with another 100+ yard game. So at least there's something there, I guess, but it's like, whatever, like you can't hurt me anymore. We're not going to make a bowl game. It's fine.
I mean, Wickman did have like 300 yards passing.
I said 338.
Yeah. Like he was pretty good. A&M's defense being bad is shocking to me.
But they're bad in some spots, but like when you look a lot, when you watch those games, and I don't expect anybody, unless you're an Aggie fan or whoever they're playing, to watch, the defense does keep them in those games a lot. They have done everything that they can in a lot of games to get the ball back to the offense. And they did it again last night against Ole Miss. They forced turnovers. They forced turnovers on downs, and the offense just couldn't get it going. So I can't begrudge the defense at all. I mean, yes, there's been spots where they've been bad, but it's the offense that we need to evolve from 1985.
All right, now it is time, and we will end this show the way we always end the show, by handing out our weekly awards. Casey Smith, who won the weekend?
Brandon, I feel like this is a recurring thing every single week. I'm going to take the Tennessee Volunteers. I believe they won the weekend. We've talked about it a ton already, so we don't need to get back into all of it. But when you look at, Ohio State, clearly, they won by 13. That's great, but that was a lot closer than it should have been in Ohio State fans' minds. You look at across the board, all these teams that keep making the statements, like Georgia, Michigan getting that win. Tennessee's making the statements to that next degree. Tennessee's making that statement where it's like, not only should they be in the conversation, they can be in a great argument to be the number one team in the country. And Hendon Hooker right now, if I was giving out the Heisman, would give it to him. So I'm going to give it to Tennessee and Hendon Hooker. Brandon Walker, who won the weekend?
Yeah, I'll keep mine short because it's the exact same as yours. I just don't know how you go with anybody but Tennessee. It's one thing to win games and to be a nice story. I think they're taking steps into being far more than a nice story, to being a legitimate national title contender. When they beat Alabama, that's a great story. When they come home and they play a ranked Kentucky and beat them 44-6 and dominate them in every facet of the game and set up the biggest game of the year next week, you have taken a step from being a nice story to being the team of the season. It's the Tennessee Volunteers. I hate to go double SEC. I rarely do that, but yeah, Tennessee won it. Jack?
UConn, winner of the weekend, and me.
Mostly you?
But yeah, you got
Yeah.
he
I mean,
bullied
like,
Pat 40.
No, it's
Dan Wolken.
Dan
I'm
Wolken,
coming for
excuse
Pat.
me.
They're the
I'm
same
coming for
person.
Pat 40 next. Don't think I forgot. You swimming dink, ding dong.
Yeah, Katie Stats.
For me, it's gonna be Drake May. There's a graphic that went up and I retweeted it last night. So Drake May compared to CJ Stroud and Bryce Young. And I know the other people around him are different. Spare me. He has 389 yards per game. CJ Stroud and Bryce Young are under 300. And Drake May has 32 touchdowns he's responsible for. CJ Stroud has 29. Bryce Young has 21. I know Drake May is not going the Heisman, but like he was kind of like, again, with a low key. He was like, if you really pay attention to college football, he was on the Heisman, because list, I should say. But I think yesterday he really came onto the scene and people like, oh shit. Like last year, UNC fans were like, how are we going to ever replace Sam Howell? Yeah, we have a replacement. We're good. We're set. I still love Sam Howell, but I'm not scared anymore.
Casey Smith, who lost the weekend?
I think, your point about Clemson and the ACC was a very good one. However, I'm going to go with, and I hope that we see more of it from Jack this week. It's got to be Michigan State to me, because Michigan State has had a really bad season. The expectations were so high, the $95 million, the tuck coming. They were still circling this game in Ann Arbor yesterday, where we were as a potential way for them to get back on track and say, hey, listen, we beat them last year. All the graphics of, I can't, it's been X amount of days since Michigan beat Michigan State. And despite the game being ugly and, pretty slow and sluggish for a lot of it, you go out, you lose to your in-state rival that means everything to you, while Michigan fans look at that Ohio State game as meaning more to them. You lose by 22 points. You've got players fighting each other, talking about suspensions. It's an all-time just fall from grace for Michigan State, because I asked on the show yesterday, the whole tuck coming thing. I don't know if I've seen a slogan die as quick, and we're a college football culture that likes to see slogans die, and we like to make fun of them and run them into the ground. Tuck coming didn't even take an entire season. And if you're a Michigan State fan, all you care about is beating Michigan, and you just got embarrassed again. And Michigan State down bad. Brandon Walker, who lost the weekend?
First of all, I just want a public service announcement for shit list. I will be going first
Okay, that's fine.
and last.
Oh, all right. Okay.
I'm double shitting today.
Ew.
Sorry, I'm double listing today. But here, who lost the weekend?
Yes.
The Clemson Tigers lost the weekend, and they didn't even play, and it's not their fault. They didn't do anything wrong. They didn't do anything to hurt anybody. They're fine. They're just sitting at home, probably playing wiffle ball in their awesome wiffle ball field there at the practice facility, and they lost the weekend. Why? Because the ACC collapsed around them. Notre Dame, again, can't beat Marshall, can't beat Cal by much, can't beat Stanford, but when they play an ACC contender, they can win. They can beat Syracuse on the road. They beat North Carolina on the road. And those are teams that are comprising the bulk of Clemson's resume. Clemson's resume is built on beating those teams, and they're going to have to survive an argument against a one-loss Tennessee or a one-loss Michigan, and their conference fell apart around them. NC State, thank God, they pulled the iron out of the fire, but they looked terrible for 3.5 quarters. Syracuse got embarrassed. Wake Forest got embarrassed. And now Clemson's going to have to go forward with dragging these dead bodies on their resume. Clemson lost yesterday. And again, Clemson fans, I'm not saying you're bad. I'm not saying it. I'm just saying everything that you're built, everything that you have to present to the world took a shot yesterday, and it wasn't your fault. Clemson lost the weekend. Jack.
Yeah, man, Casey, really, like, I feel like it's like when I see her do a great TikTok, when I see her yelling about Michigan State, I just feel like such pride in my heart. Yeah, just pathetic, man. I didn't think it would be this bad this year, man. I won't sit here and pretend. I thought maybe 8-4, 7-5. They may not make a bowl game.
It's so bad.
This is sad, really sad. And if this was just a regular D'Antonio team, whatever. But this was like talk coming. And they're losing commits left and right. It's too bad. It's too bad. I'm gonna have to smoke a cigar at the end of this season. I don't even care about what happened in the tunnel, by the way.
Jack, did you see Brandon's dog of the week from Michigan? He said it was his dog shit of the week. And he basically said, I mean, Brandon, if you want to do your, like what you said, he was like, all the Twitter fans, you're saying tuck coming. You're gonna
nice. We're a podcast in unison.
Yes.
Yeah, all right, relax on that. Katie Stats, who lost the weekend?
Michigan State too, but I'm gonna say Oklahoma State fans and Wake Forest fans having good seasons and just nope, not our year. Shit hit the fan.
Yeah,
not having fun.
All right, I'll lead off the shit list portion of the show.
Okay.
And this happened a couple of years ago when Mississippi State got in a fight, and it's happening now. But this subset of fans that go on Twitter, or these very self-righteous sports writers or commentators, that every time there's a fight on the field or in the tunnel or something, listen, these are 18 to 22-year-old young men. When you get these emotions and these stakes, fights are going to happen. They're stupid and they're awful, and there's nothing to be proud of, but they happen. And usually about 5 minutes after they happen, they're over and it doesn't matter at all. But everybody, all these analysts and self-righteous guys are saying, oh, this is the worst thing ever. This is embarrassing. This is terrible. This is what, get the police involved. Shut up. It's football players acting stupid in the heat of the moment. This is not an indictment on Michigan State to me. It's not an indictment on Michigan. It's not an indictment on young people. It's just something stupid that happened, and it looks awful, but stupid things have been happening since the beginning of time with guys that are 18 to 22. This is not this gigantic deal. Just let's look at it, hand out some suspensions, and move the hell on. Mm-hmm. That's my shit list. Casey, go.
I'm going to keep mine quick because, it's kind of like adding fuel to the fire to certain things. But, I know we like to toot our own horn a lot for funny stuff, but I want inside my shit list is also just thanking everybody. Dan put it perfectly last night. The fact that we were able to pull off those 2 shows yesterday, and thanks to everybody from behind the scenes that had to work their asses off to make it happen. My shit list is all these people who, all week were like, oh, we don't give a fuck. Who cares? Like, you're doing shows in the middle of football. Like, shut up. Like, if you're a Barstool fan, appreciate how big this thing is getting. And it was so annoying to see. And again, I know it's a vocal majority, a small what is it, vocal minority on Twitter, but to see all the people that came out to both of those shows yesterday, and to see the loyalty that comes behind it. Barstool's fans are the best in the country. So anybody trying to downplay what we did yesterday, and not just the people that are on camera, people behind the scenes, just the company in general, the sponsors, shut the fuck up and just enjoy cool things. And what happened yesterday for Barstool Sports and for live shows was really fucking cool. So just shut up and accept it. If you don't like it, I don't know, block, mute, don't watch. Just shut the fuck up. It's college football. Thank you.
Very well said. Jack Mack, shit list?
I don't have one. I think I would Dan Walken, but I already talked about it.
Katie Stats, shit list?
Oklahoma State and Mike fucking Gundy. Yes, it was my fault for believing in them. Also, if you ever think you're a bad gambler, I had the worst pick of all time. I had Oklahoma State team total over, and he scored 0 points. We joke about Mike Gundy getting to the big stage, getting to big games, is choking, and then again and again. When also, how do you just not score a point? How do you not? You can't make a field goal. You can't get a safety. They have how do you not score a point? That's embarrassing. Just as a program, I love the Oklahoma State Viceroy. We're friends, and I was like, your program's dead to me. Your school's dead to me. It's embarrassing. That must have been the most embarrassing loss of the weekend. I don't understand how you don't score a point.
All right. I guess it falls to me. Very well said, Katie. It falls to me to end the show on a shit list. And I'm going to go ahead and say right now, if you have enjoyed this show, thank you. And you can check out now. Casey and Katie and Jack, you can check out now if you want, because right now I got to preach to my Mississippi State fans.
Oh boy.
It's fun to have a national show. It's fun to talk about everybody else, but I waited till the very end. I got to preach to my Bulldogs right now. I got to look them in the eye, and Daddy's got to speak to them, okay? Because I know Daddy moved away, and Daddy's in New York, and he's doing big things, but Daddy's still looking towards home. All right, here we go. Yesterday, again, if you're not a Mississippi State fan, you don't need to listen to this. You can listen to it, but you don't need to. So just me to them.
Stop downplaying it. Go off, King.
Yesterday, while we were in the air, we left Penn State. Everything was fine. When we landed in Michigan, Mississippi State had their athletic director left. John Cohen, the athletic director, who, by the way, when I said this earlier, when I was 10 years old, I would go to Mississippi State baseball games and sit in right field. Why? Because they had a big left-handed hitter named John Cohen. They hit a bunch of home runs out there, and I would get a free ball. John Cohen's been in my life since I was 10 years old. He played at Mississippi State, played 4 years at Mississippi State for the baseball team. Then he came back, and he was the coach of Mississippi State baseball when they played for a national title in 2013. And then he was made the athletic director. The man was handed the keys to the kingdom. He played there. He coached there. And then we said, you know what? For all of you've done, here, you're the athletic director. Take us into the future. And yesterday, that motherfucker got hired at Auburn to be their athletic director. That guy who Mississippi State handed the world to, handed everything to, said, well, you're the King Bulldog. You can be the King Bulldog for the rest of your life. And then he said, you know what? Great, thanks. I'm going to go to Auburn. Fuck you, okay? Go. Just like Scott Strickland, who was our athletic director in 2017, and he left and took Dan Mullen. Go, because they hate Scott Strickland in Florida. They hate Dan Mullen in Florida, and they're going to hate you at Auburn. Mississippi State needs Mississippi State guys. They need Mississippi State men who, when they get to the top, or when they get to the top of the Mississippi State chain and the universe, they say, you know what? I'm going to use this, and I'm going to make sure Mississippi State is the best Mississippi State it could possibly be. I'm not going to look elsewhere. I'm not going to go somewhere else. I'm going to say, hey, Bulldogs, thank you for making me the King Bulldog. Thank you. We're going to turn this thing, and we're going to make Mississippi State awesome. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to 24/7, 365. I'm going to breathe Mississippi State. I'm not going to say I'm going to breathe Mississippi State until Auburn comes along. Fuck Auburn. They're assholes. Fuck Florida. It's a Mississippi State world, and I'm tired of people leaving. And if I got to go, I will leave Barstool, and I will go save Mississippi State athletics. Oh God, my mother-in-law heard that. She's clapping out on the back steps. Okay, there you go. That was my shit list, and that's the show. Katie, Casey, Jack, thank you. That's unnecessary roughness.